Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the bonus episode for the third month of this podcast, which is, of course, our November month of Alfred Hitchcock. We're doing our bonus episode on the 1970s Alfred Hitchcock, which is anyone who has Google will know is a very short list. But of course, Zach is here. How you doing, Zach?
Hey. I'm good. We just talked about my super muscles off camera because I grated 4 potatoes and a full bar of squash, and I haven't felt this good about my physical health in months.
This is COVID times. We have very low standards for physical fitness, and in this case, grading potatoes has reached the A+ level. Look at Zach showing off the guns right there.
I'm just stretching. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just as a heads up, as somebody who has a bad habit of flexing in mirrors, if you flex and look at it at the same time, it looks more impressive. Just a heads up.
Hey, baby. Like that.
And we're off the rails already.
We have one person that watches our video.
Yeah. But let us continue on to our favorite intro, the world's favorite intro, which is, of course, the last movie you logged on Letterboxd. Zach Ford, what is the last movie you logged on Letterboxd?
Definitely my last one I logged in Letterboxd and not 6 ago because we cheat for this segment. I watched documentary Dick Johnson is Dead. Is directed by Katherine Johnson, who had a fairly acclaimed documentary called Camera Person. She was a camera person for her career, and then she recently started taking advantage of some of her extra footage to make that movie. But then, was also inspired by not inspired. That's a dark term. Her dad is starting to digress with Alzheimer's. She lost her mom to Alzheimer's, and they talk about the movie that they kind of consider that like fully losing a person, that like is the death of the person once they um, have fully been consumed by Alzheimer's. So they start to try to come to terms with it and cope with it by filming him dying in fantastical situations, like getting an air conditioner dropped on his face. They have like stunt people. That's like how the movie is promoted, but it really is a small aspect of the movie. But it's a lot more how their relationship between her starting to be a caretaker for him and through making this movie starts to uncover truths about death, about how are they processing this loss, how they process the loss of their mom, and in a weird way, watching people talk very bluntly and sincerely about death is very comforting to me. And I found this movie a warm blanket, even though it is about upcoming death of your father. And it's sad and hard. They throw a full funeral with him watching from the back, and everyone is crying. And for some reason, just that acceptance in a way I find comforting. So it's a lovely movie. It's on Netflix, so everybody should go and watch it. Dick Johnson is dead.
Yeah, I mean, this does sound like the movie everyone wants to watch during a pandemic. I do hear actually really good things about it, so I will check it out at some point. The last movie I logged on Letterboxd was the rewatch of the brilliant David Gordon Green comedy Pineapple Express, which is tackling similar themes that are as important as the movie that Zach talked about. In this film, they're talking.
Is it also a warm and comforting movie about death and grief?
I mean, it is surprisingly violent for a comedy, but it's really funny. And I think the first time I watched it, it was one of these movies that I don't think I got all the jokes, and then the second turn through, I really connected with a lot of it. And there's just some really good stuff. Annie McBride is hysterical in this movie. Seth Rogen and Franco are really good. It just really lets them kind of play around. It's kind of the height of the 2000s like improv comedy thing where they figure out a way to let people play with scenes in a way that actually works rather than just seems like, oh, you guys are trying to play in the scene. And it's some kind of this like the realism to it that David Gordon Green brings out in his actors actually really works. Hysterical movie. Really glad I rewatched. Been watching a lot of 2000s comedies recently.
Yeah. And too bad they don't make comedies big budget anymore. You want to talk about this for the next half hour?
Yes, of course, Zach is circling back to our Psycho episode with Caleb Oatman, where we talked about the state of studio comedies for about 35 minutes. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been very interesting to. Basically, the main reason I decided to rewatch a lot of these movies is these were things I watched my last 2 years of high school or my first years of college, and I hadn't seen since. And it is kind of shocking, I guess not shocking, that your memory of events that long ago, especially when it comes to movies, is not always that good. Like I am finding myself liking a lot of these things more than I did, um, just over time. Like we talked about it in previous, but like Knocked Up was one of those ones that like as you age hits you slightly differently than it does when you're a 16-year-old. Because that movie is not made for it, unlike a lot of the raunchy comedies at that time. That movie is not made for a 16-year-old. A 16-year-old does not get any of the stuff in that. And even Pineapple Express kind of grapples with this idea of like, wow, you're growing older and you don't know what you're doing. Like that is a lot more meaningful when you're in your mid 20s than it is when you're 17. So
Yeah. Yeah, as your
just
personal experiences change, your ability to relate to different movies will also change. And that's just, part of growing and relating to art.
absolutely. And this is why you rewatch movies at different time periods because they just hit you in different ways.
And referring to Pineapple Express as great art. So we can move on
No,
now.
no. Hey man, that movie made me crack up quite hard multiple times. But let us continue on to our discussion of our main film, which is, of course, Family Plot, which is the final film in the illustrious and long-running career of one Alfred Hitchcock. Um, I think you said this to me before we started taping. This is a really weird movie. A really, really weird movie.
Wait, am I not giving the plot? Okay, we can skip to the
Oh, yeah,
American
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fan
My
segment.
bad. We're getting,
And
me
we,
and Zach are bad at podcasting. Zach Ford, would you like to hit us with your world famous Zach Ford's plot summary, which will
I
not
should
be
have
introduced?
let you go away with that because I really don't know how to talk about this movie. There's a lot of shit, man. There's a lot of things happening.
Tell us.
So Barbara Harris, great from the movie Nashville, and everyone should just watch Nashville. Okay, that's the plot. Um,
Zach Ford, the plot of Family Plot is watch
watch
Nashville.
Nashville. Uh, Barbara Harris is a fake medium. You're introduced to her right away. You don't know if she's fake or real at the beginning, of course, because you haven't been told anything. But she's talking to an old woman, and talking to her sister. Right? She's pretending to talk to her dead sister or something like that.
Think
Hey,
so.
yeah, and they talk about how they left, no heir, and there was a child that was long, given up and kind of lost in a way. And she asks her to please go and find, this guy, this heir, so he can take over, her estate and her inheritance. So they lucked out because they were just con people trying to take advantage of an old woman, and then they get offered this other job that they view as easy of finding this man for lots of money. Her and her boyfriend, taxi driver, Bruce Stern, who is flashing some real Zach Ford hair throughout this whole movie, and we'll talk in length about this. That he is my fashion icon, and shenanigans happen. There's also another couple who is um, kind of steal they kidnap people for ransom, and usually the ransom is for diamonds, and the guy that orchestrates it is a owns a diamond store. So those stories kind of collide because it all turns out he was the guy. In the middle there's crazy car crashes, they kidnap a bishop. It's a bishop, not a priest, right? He's just like reading books in their basement cellar while he's they're waiting for his ransom, and it all turns out at the end to where the couple that is we're trying to find him kind of just like stumble upon. They thought they found him at the last 10 minutes. It's like, hey, there's lots of money waiting for you. And then the bishop falls out of the car, drugged out, and then they can't let him get away because they know the truth. So they have no idea what's happening this whole movie until the last 5 minutes that they witnessed the bishop. It was a complete misunderstanding for 90 minutes between the two couples. They both thought the other one wanted something else. Really bizarre shit. And then when they knock out the villainous kidnapping couple, they have to look for the diamond, which is very cleverly hidden with tape that will definitely stick for all this period of time on a chandelier. And she gives a great wink to the camera, which is like straight out of Bewitched, and it turns into a 50s sitcom for the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
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 Hey, you want to fill in all those blanks? Watch Movie Family Plot. Nothing what I said makes sense, and I honestly kind of accurate.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a
sense.
It is a hard movie to break down.
There's just so much. It's a very maximalist, movie. He's throwing in, kidnapping bishops, diamond thieves, fake seances, taxi drivers, car accident scenes, fucking. There's a lot of wanting to fuck in this movie. There's so much happening. Every 5 minutes is like something new, and as I said, the plot like never has a direct path because both of the main couples are on their own separate paths, confused about what the other person wants.
Mm-hmm.
That just kind of zigs and sags until it comes to a collision at the end. That makes it kind of it's almost like a screwball comedy in a lot of ways. It's like a screwball crime comedy until it collides at the end. It's a real just intensely plotted movie, just so much shit. It's like he went to a random word generator back in the 1970s that definitely existed and just typed in like, give me 10 words and came up with like priest, diamond.
Yeah. It is definitely, it definitely does feel like the 1950s version of this Hitchcock movie is Barbara Harris is a psychic with Bruce Dern, and they're looking for the kid, and that's it. And the jewel thief isn't a part of this movie, and the bishop isn't a part of this movie, and it is a more simple Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris are trying to track down the long lost nephew and heir for this old woman. Like, that's the 1950s. This movie has even like, and this movie is really weird, and probably the biggest reason, and one of like the quickest things it's weird, is that opening scene is bizarre. I don't know what's going on. Like you start this movie.
You think you're in a ghost movie.
Yeah, you think you're going to wake up from a dream or something. It's not reality, or you think that you've put the wrong movie on because it just doesn't feel like a Hitchcock movie. It's a very weird movie.
And that scene is so important too. They really like get to what the plot is going to be right away. You think this is just like introducing the characters. Yeah, we have these con artists, and you don't really think they're going to tie too much back into that. That's just to kind of establish them as anti-heroes in a lot of ways, which are the rare anti-hero in a Hitchcock movie as well. Like you cannot root for these people other than we just talked about Psycho. She could also be considered like an anti-hero. She was stealing money because these are con people.
Yeah, but you like
the end.
You like the lead in Psycho way more than you like Barbara Harris or Bruce Dern in this movie.
No, they're really just taking advantage of little old women and trying to take their money by doing.
Yeah, they're like genuinely bad. Mediation. They're genuinely bad people. They don't seem particularly happy together. There's not really anything to root for. At least in
Hitchcock does not think they are bad. I feel like they are seen very charismatically, very endearingly. That
maybe
I think that's also very 70s. Like, being kind of shithead was endearing for the 70s. That's what people were watching on the screen.
This also just throws the entire Hitchcock. We've been talking this entire series about the Hitchcock formula of you have a male lead and there's a woman and he doesn't know what's going on. He kind of walks. This movie throws the entire Hitchcock formula out the window. I don't think if you showed this movie to somebody and you took Hitchcock's name off this movie and like took him out of it as a cameo, I don't think you would be able to know this was a Hitchcock movie.
It's like someone who watched a lot of Hitchcock movies and then went and done his own crazy shit with a few homages to him.
Yeah.
Because there's some scenes I find very Hitchcocky, like moments of the car scene, which I do want to go in great length about. But
Mhm.
moments of how that is shot, and you see the oil leaking out, and you're given all the evidence of what's about to happen. Like you see, the mechanics of the scene are very visible, and I think that's very Hitchcockian. But the general character dynamics, the plot setup is all like so ridiculous. I talked a little bit last week when we were talking about 60s Hitchcock that he really starts to move with the time, near the late 60s and wants to,
Mhm.
stay hip. And this was
Yep.
his, I think, was his way of not being, stuck in the classical, 50s dynamic, trying to do something a little weird, a little crazier. I mean, we keep saying how it's ridiculous and doesn't make tons of sense, but it's still like highly enjoyable to
Oh
watch.
yeah. It is honestly kind of impressive though if you're Alfred Hitchcock, a guy who's been working since the 1920s, to try to evolve with the times and make films that no, I don't think they live up in the 70s movies live up to his 50s or 60s stuff or 40s. But like he's still trying to evolve, which is kind of really impressive for like if you're Alfred Hitchcock, you could have very easily been like, I'm gonna make an 1950s Alfred Hitchcock movie into the 1970s and 80s because
He
I'm
could just
Alfred
made
Hitchcock and you're gonna do
Man Who Knew Too Much for the third time in 1970, starring Jack Nicholson.
I mean, he could have. This is Alfred Hitchcock. This is not somebody who lacked clout in Hollywood, and the fact that he chose to try to adapt and change is honestly to be admired. But let's talk about the main mystery of this movie, which is, of course, uh, who is where is the the long lost heir. Um, so through the film, they track him and they realize, oh, we think it's this person, Edward Shoebridge. Edward Shoebridge. Um,
He's
this
a
is where it gets.
weasel and a fuck.
This is when it gets really weird. So they find out that Edward Shoebridge and his adopted family, or quote, like what would they think is adopted family, died in a fire.
Yeah,
Although, and you look at their, I can't remember, is it if you look at their tombstones, they have the same date, except he's supposed to have died when he was older than that date.
maybe.
It
Yeah, this
might,
thing is hard to connect. I know
and
it,
then and then they find out that like, oh, his body isn't even in the grave. Somebody else paid for that, and then they track it to this other person, Mahoney or Maloney, I think.
this is
Yeah,
great. I
Maloney.
like him. He has a
I
good
like
look for
Maloney.
that
I like
role.
Maloney. And then from there, they're like, "Oh, why is this guy trying to do this?" And then Maloney leads them to Arthur Addleston, the jewel thief, and the jeweler, who then we realize is Sturbridge, who is actually the original heir. This is
Did
the
he
funniest thing was,
kill his parents? Were they
yeah, he
established?
burned them.
Okay. Oh, he burned them because he's just like a real
I
fuck.
believe Maloney helped him.
Is this really about anti giving up your kids for adoption?
You
If
don't know
they end
what
up in adopted, they become a psychopath, parent burning kidnapper, jewel thief.
And then it gets even weirder because Barbara Harris tracks down Adelson and then goes to Adelson's house. And then she kind of sneaks in. And that's when she sees the bishop. And then she gets captured as well. And then somehow,
They knock him out.
Bruce Dern manages to find her because he sees her car outside of a house. Like, this is not a movie. This is not the standard Hitchcock mystery where like he's looking for something and following like the basic rules. He just sort of stumbles upon it, and then he goes in
They
and
stumble on
rescues her.
everything.
They
There's
really
nothing
do.
is tight. He just happens to be there when the priest gets kidnapped. Like these couples keep kind of intermingling without them even being, aware of it.
Yeah, and then he goes in and he rescues Barbara Harris and he locks the two bad people up and they find the jewels and that's like I guess the idea we're supposed to do is that actually she's really psychic and that's why she found the jewels. She's not a fake.
She's not. She winks at the camera. She's not actually psychic. She's wink. She faked it. She like saw it when they were walking because it's on a piece of fucking tape. It's
No.
not that
I know.
hard.
I'm just saying.
His finger.
I'm just like it's a double. It's like it's a fake out
Yeah,
that she
she's
is a
doing
real
this
psychic,
stuff.
and then it's a double fake out that she's playing it up, and then the movie
She's insane.
ends.
She just almost got murdered, and she's out here playing pranks on Bruce Dern to believe he's psychic. It's not time for games. Just get that diamond off the tape, and let's move on.
And then the movie ends And the poor old woman who paid her, nothing's happened. She hasn't got
No,
any
they never
info.
go back to her. You can assume maybe they like, hey, we found him. He like, murdered a bunch of people and kidnapped the bishop. Uh, and then do you
Then the
think they
old
should
lady
get them?
was
I say,
like,
oh, we'll get the money in jail.
and
We can
the old
change
lady
them.
was like, let's pretend that he's not my nephew, and we don't have to write him into the will. It is so weird. Like that's the opening scene of the movie. That's the instigator for the entire plot.
Yeah.
And we never go back to it, which is the weirdest thing, because that is the most un-Hitchcock thing ever. Alfred Hitchcock would always closes loops, and that's like one of the weird things about this movie is like he's become over time just more okay with whatever. I mean, we don't have to go back to every single detail.
He forgot what the MacGuffin was. Like the MacGuffin was supposed to be Shoebridge, and it became the diamond halfway through the movie. So he
Yeah.
resolved the diamond, but forgets that he already had a separate MacGuffin that we're supposed to tie together.
Yes, and if anyone is listening to this or watching this and having trouble following, yes, this movie is very weird. I do suggest
I
everyone watch it.
assume you watch. Yeah, watch the movie. You're going to listen to the podcast because mainly we make no sense. We're not good at filling in the gaps.
I mean, we've joked about this before. We're not trying to do a podcast for somebody who's trying to find out if they want to watch Family Plot, because I honestly, you can't talk about this movie unless you talk about everything. Like
Yeah.
you either can say, like the non-spoiler review of this movie is literally an old woman hires people to find her long lost nephew. That's literally the non-spoiler version of this. And to give
It's
any more details or talk
2 minutes of the movie.
right, no, but I know, but like you without spoiling stuff, you can't say anymore.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about the female characters in this movie and how they differ from Hitchcock's traditional ones.
Yeah, you kind of addressed it that all the characters are not very traditional Hitchcock characters, especially like Bruce Dern as a lead would never be a lead
No.
of a movie pre-70s, let alone a Hitchcock movie. But the characters, first of all, you don't see a lot of villainous. I mean, I said Marion Crane is, in a way, a little bit of an anti-hero. She is stealing money, but she, still has not well, she has comeuppance, but she also, starts to turn her ways. She starts to redeem herself. She has redemption right before she dies in Psycho, and this has two female characters that have no redemption. They both kind of shitheads. The one played by Karen Black, who is the girlfriend of Shoebridge, maybe girlfriend of Shoebridge, wants to be the girlfriend of Shoebridge.
Wife, I
Both these
think.
women just want to get fucked, and the guys don't care. um, anyways, so Karen Black is just like straight up a villain, even though she kind of is like she's like doing it for attention, it seems like, for Shuba's attention, but she is, committing these kidnapping plots. There's no redemption. Is there any Hitchcock movies that has a female villain in it? I feel like this might
No.
be the only.
It's not a very
Yeah, so
common it's not a very common thing.
they're not the blonde bombshells, the steely blonde bombshells that he like idolized. And so once they're not, blonde and you know Hitchcock's version of hot, then they have to be evil. Is that how he views brunettes? I think so. Barbara Harris is blonde, to be fair, but she's also just a dope.
This is like the weird thing is like the battle in the two couples. One couple, the black what's his name? William Devane couple.
Yeah.
Addleston and Fran is basically she's bad and he's worse. Like he's a
She's
legitimate
only bad
psycho.
because of him. Like she's
He's
just
a
trying to impress him.
right. She's like trying to keep up with him, and he's like a legitimate psycho who like burned his family when he was like 15 or something. Like he is. But
You
like
look at
that's the
that guy,
thing. That's the thing.
he's a psycho. That guy's a psychopath. He's also a marathon man. Also, is a fucking creep. He's like
I
the creep
know,
of the
but that's not a Hitchcock character though.
No, it's not.
You have crazy people who don't know what they're doing in Psycho, or you like a lot of times the bad guy is related to something politically or from like a military perspective or something. Yeah, he's just like legitimately evil. And then like the other couple, Barbara Harris and Bruce Dern, are basically like competing to see who's the bigger idiot. Like there is no charming lead. There is no sexy bombshell female lead.
Barbara Harris is kind of charming in her dumb way.
Okay, yeah, but like this is
In her performance, not in her character design.
This is not James Stewart and Doris Day. This is not Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. This is not this is not even Rebecca or 39 Steps in terms of like these characters are either evil or kind of bumbling, which is um neither of those archetypes are traditional Hitchcock characters.
In a way, the traditional part is that they are in over their heads. They're kind of unaware of everything that's happening, and it's just the collision of this evil plot clashing into their real lives. They just
Mhm.
stumble on it, and that is a classic Hitchcock joke. That is
That is
39 Steps. It is North by Northwest, just in a much more screwbally way.
absolutely. I will have to say, shout out to William Devane, who has a fantastic mustache in this movie. That is top tier Hitchcock mustaches. It's a wonderful mustache. We all should worship at the
He
altar of
also
that
just
mustache.
has like one of the greatest shit-eating grins. He just has such a shit-eating
He has
face.
such a good grin. Just a smirk. He just looks like he just look, and he, like when he thinks he gets
Smarmy
away with
fuck.
stuff, it's a great look. I will say though, you brought this up earlier, but like, oh my god, Alfred Hitchcock has gotten to the 1970s, and he's like, oh, there's not a censorship board anymore, and Barbara Harris legitimately spends the first 40 minutes of the movie. The only thing she wants to do is have sex. That's like her goal. And like Bruce, like freaking Bruce Dern is sitting there going, "Oh, I don't really feel like it."
I
It's like
gotta
the
ride my cab. They need me in my cab.
it's like the ultimate loser boyfriend in Bruce Dern is just like she's like, "Hey, do you want to have sex?" And he's like, I mean, I'm tired. My legs hurt." Like it's like every excuse in the book. But this is also
Okay.
just so weird for a Hitchcock movie because you've lived through all these movies where it's like super hot people, but they never, because obviously during the time they were made, you couldn't mention that in the same way. Like,
Hey, they were post coitus in Psycho. It was
true,
definitely
true, but
fucking.
post coitus is he's wearing pants and she's got like a
She's
bunch of
a
clothes on.
brazier. A brazier. Brazier. Do you pronounce the R? I don't
I think
know.
it's brassiere. I'm pretty sure it's
Oh
brassiere.
damn it! This is embarrassed. We're canceled
Tweet
for
at
bad
us.
pronunciations.
Tweet at us if you know the correct pronunciation of the word we just used.
Write Michael Campbell an email, and he'll write us an email, and that's how our fan mail is handled.
Absolutely. Yeah, but it's just like it's funny watching a Hitchcock movie, and it's just like sex is like he's just the shackles have been taken off, and he can now talk directly about sex. And he's like, "Yep, these characters they're gonna want to have sex all the time."
Except is he like the old man version? Because it's like, but sometimes just like not in the fucking mood, and I'm tired, and I gotta ride my cab. And she's just all over me. See, Lucas, you think this is weird as a person who's not married, and maybe a little deprived in a lot of ways in life. And then once you're like, I've been with Sarah for 10 years, I love her, but like some point, it's like sometimes you're tired, man.
This is a stunning endorsement of marriage after wife.
It's nice to get to that comfort level, though.
So basically, what you're saying is you would rather go drive a cab than have sex with your wife.
If I needed to support my child, and just so I can go listen to some jams in my car.
Yeah.
I do think that I should have been a truck driver because I can just like listen to podcasts and music all day.
Zach Ford as a taxi driver would be the most annoying person because you would get in his taxi and you would just play his music the entire
Blast
time.
it, and you cannot say a word to me.
He'd be like the guy you get the Uber you get in, and it's just like, whose business plan was it to just blast your music the entire time I'm in it?
It's heavily curated, top hundreds of different years. They'll like it. I
Yeah,
know what the
absolutely.
customer wants. Speaking of cars,
Let's do it. Let's
okay,
do it. Car scene.
Hitchcock's greatest thing he has ever made. I think I could watch this scene daily.
It's a great scene.
So it's great and horrible at the same time for various reasons. So as Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris are waiting to meet up with what's his face, the gas station attendant that is helping out
Maloney.
Shoebridge Maloney. Thank you. They're waiting for Maloney to come meet them at a restaurant or a diner to kind of tell them where Shoebridge is so that he can, claim the money.
We pause for one second. Pause for one second. They're at a diner where
Yeah.
a priest and a bunch of children are, and they're drinking multiple beers. This is the weirdest diner
They're
I've
root
ever
beer. Oh, they're drinking beers. I don't know
beer.
why those characters are included in there. It's like supposed to kind of build suspicion of maybe these people are going in, but he's just like hanging out with the kids he took from church because they were the good kids in Sunday school and the other kids weren't. And this is very concerning in the year of
There's also a
2020.
there's also a random part of the scene where the priest, some hot girl walks in, and the priest's like, "Hey, come sit over with me,"
Oh,
which is
and
just weirdness.
they have a history because they seem like there might have been some drama beforehand. She seemed a little upset.
Yeah,
Like he didn't know she was gonna show up. There's a whole story. I want the Hitchcock sequel of this priest
I
at
do.
the restaurant. So that starts off with a super high note there, and then so while they're waiting for him, Maloney is like messing with their oil and the brakes in the car, and a way to kill them, so they don't find out who the real Shoebridge is because they don't realize they just want him to give them tons of money. Um, so they give up waiting for him. They get into the car, and the car starts to fall apart. Now,
Mm.
I said there's like great Hitchcock moments. You see, you saw the work he was doing beforehand. They go. He shoots to the bottom of the car, and you see the oil kind of coming out, and you see the road starting to swerve as they're driving on these California cliff sides, which is like my number one fear. And I've never even driven in California, but I'm so scared of driving in California. I've never done it. Thinking about it stresses me the fuck out. I don't like edges. I don't like narrow roads. And how are you driving without any fucking rail to keep you safe? They need to put a rail there. So they're swerving. There's no rail. They're gonna fall off the cliff. Barbara Harris is just
It's
like in a
hysterical.
spinny run. It's like the some of the she's so good for most of the movie, and then this is just so bad. But she is like falling on top of him. At one point, I think her full body is like wrapped around his neck, like
Oh
a
yeah,
monkey on a tree. Her
her
head
foot
is
is on the
probably
steering wheel.
nowhere. Brewster somehow is able to stay pretty steady. I think he wore a seatbelt. This is all a seatbelt PSA. And her body is just, some point she's like half in the back seat with her leg up in the air, and she is doing so much movement. We said she wanted to fuck, and she looked like she was trying to, fuck his arm while they were like near falling off this bridge or
Yeah.
this cliff. It's a great thing to behold, and it ends very anticlimactically. They kind of just
Oh
like
yeah.
fuzzle out on the side. There's no like big wreck, but it keeps going because Maloney shows up. They kind of just say like hi,
It's
and
so
then
weird.
like
Like
hey, I
they
know
literally
you.
just roll off the road. They're like fine. They climb out of this car. They walk over to the road, and like Maloney's there, and then he offers them a ride. And like
And they
this
don't
scene,
take it.
it's just so it's there's so many things you could talk about or critique, and like one of them is like I think they do a really good job setting up why this is going to happen. Like, oh, Maloney's doing this, oh, Maloney's doing that.
Yeah.
But then, number one, I think the amount of the time they spend going out of control is way too long. Because at some point you can see that the
I don't
actors
think
in the
it's long
car.
enough. I think it should have been a half hour.
I don't think the actors have anything to do though. I think Bruce Stern is just like I'm gonna. I like my. This is the best part of this is Bruce Stern just like I'm gonna sit here with my hands on the steering wheel the entire time. I don't care. Barbara Harris can literally strip all her clothes off and do a stand on her head, and I will sit here with my hands on the steering wheel.
He just like yells 8 times, "Get your hands off the wheel! Get your hands off the wheel!" Because she's just like grabbing it. That's definitely the safe idea to do when you're falling out of car, just to grab the wheel. But you didn't get to the point. So when they don't take the ride, so they walk around, and Maloney just drives back up, and he's trying to like run them over to where he crashes, and
Oh
dies.
yeah.
So it ends in his death. So the unexpected, it just keeps going, and you never know where the scene is headed. And as I say, like the unexpectedness of it, I find great. The actual way it's shot through, the kind of some dashboard scenes. I was looking forward, and you can see the scenery, kind of get blurry and bobble about, and that's all very nice. And then you just have everything happening in the car, which, in a way, contrasts with any suspense the movie's trying to have because it's just like pure accidental comedy.
Oh
In its
yeah.
form.
I don't think they realize how funny Barbara Harris is in that scene.
They
I
don't.
don't think anyone who's filming that movie thought that was funny. I think they watched the run of that and was like, man, she looks terrified. But you watch that now, and it is so funny. It's like, how is she contorting herself into these weird positions? It doesn't even look like she's getting thrown around. It looks like she's intentionally doing it. Like it looks like she's gone crazy.
Like
Like,
she just lost her mind and her body just started spinning. What it
yeah,
kind of looked like is those big like walking bubbles that like you walk in and kids like can't control their bodies
absorbing.
just start
Yeah,
going everywhere. This is what she's doing, but instead of a bubble, it's a regular car.
it
She's just
really does look
bobbing
like
all
it.
around.
I would just love to know what the direction was to that scene, because the direction for Bruce Dern seems to be try to steer the car as it's going out of control. And I don't know what they told Barbara Harris, but have a seizure was probably not what
They
the.
told her the car is losing its balance, and so you're finding it hard to set. And she's like, I got this. My knees are going to be over Bruce Dern's head, and my head's going to be on the dashboard.
It's just so weird because it's like, why did she think that the way you would react during a car going out of control was not to get like thrown around,
To
because she's not getting
crawl
thrown.
around the
She's not
car.
getting she's not getting thrown around the way you would if the car was swerving back and forth. She literally ends up in positions that the car would have to be grabbed by like ropes and flipped into the air to get her to move into those positions. It is
You
so
know what she was?
nonsensical.
She's like, when you are too dumb to not keep your cat in a cat cage when you're driving the car. And
Oh
if you're
yeah,
like, oh, my cat's gonna be controlled, it's definitely gonna like just chill in the backseat, and that cat's is like on her head, and it's on the
yeah,
dashboard, and it's all over the place. She's just like crawling around this car.
yeah. And then like, whose idea was it to have the end of this crazy scene be float? Like, that's the end of the scene. They get to this end of the scene, and the car just kind of falls over, and they crawl out of it.
It's not the ending. It's like a
No,
fake
no,
ending.
no, no, no. I'm saying, I know, but like, you do this crazy scene, and the consequences of this crazy scene are basically nothing. No one's hurt. No one even seems slightly hurt. And then you have the craziness of Maloney. It's just interesting because it feels like
They seem
whoever
mildly
was they
just
just
like
seemed like they seemed when they were feeling like they just totally didn't read the scene the way the audience was going to read it, because it comes off more funny and goofy than I think they meant it to be.
or we're just misunderstanding Hitchcock's comic genius. And I definitely will watch the scene 50 times before I die. Not the movie.
Not the movie, just the scene. Um, Great scene, absolutely. I would like to talk about one other thing, which is I don't think Bruce Dern ages. Bruce Dern
Well, because he
is
was always old. That makes it seem like he's like Paul Rudd and just like an ageless beauty. He was just like 80
no, 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 no.
from birth.
Paul Rudd was always like 25. Bruce Dern was always like a 60-year-old man. His entire life, he has been a sort of grumpy, irritated 60-year-old man. Like, the character in Family Plot would have the same response to Barbara Harris as the character in Nebraska would.
Yeah.
He would be annoyed, and he'd want to just go drive his cat.
um, I do think that part of it is he never fully embraced his balding, just like me. Like he's just like, I'm not balding. I'm telling you, I'm just gonna grow my hair out, and it's gonna look like I have a full head of hair. It's gonna stick out straight up. There's hair. I'm not bald, and he's like had the same hairstyle forever. But this one's especially almost like the like modern Jack Nicholson, where it's just like sticking to the sides, which is definitely like me in the middle of a school day. That's what I say. It's real Zach Ford look. In a lot of ways, I just need to have a gray. Or his is brown in this movie because he didn't prematurely gray,
No.
but it's a great hair look. Definitely, like he does not give any shits, and he just like is just rubbing his hair all day long. He also is just like smoking a pipe for half of this movie. I think he's
Oh
trying to
yeah.
look like a lawyer, and that's a fucking look. Like that's a great look. Bruce Dern has changed my whole life. I'm gonna walk around shirtless like he does it once. He's smoking a pipe with my hair going 8 different directions at once. And Barbara Harris will come at me.
Absolutely. And then you'll tell Barbara Harris you have to go drive a cab.
Smoking my pipe.
It
Leave
is
me
he
alone.
has a
It's
look.
like a full Sherlock Holmes pipe, by the way. When you hear me, it has the full like swerve and out.
I think he legitimately was like, I need to go find this missing kid, so I'm going to dress up like Sherlock Holmes while I do this. He walks around with this stupid pipe, because I refuse to believe that he normally would use that.
He tries to play himself off as a lawyer, and I was like, you know what would make me look like a lawyer? Like an old fashioned pipe.
It's like a really bad children's Halloween costume from a kid who doesn't completely understand the thing that they're attempting to dress up as. They're like, I think lawyers have pipes. And the parent is like, yeah, they don't really, but the kid's like, you know what? I really think my lawyer would have a pipe. And he's just like, because he likes to knock it out on stuff. He gets to do the fun scene where he goes up to the gravestones, where he figures out the gravestone for Shoebridge was newer, and he gets to tap his pipe on them. I don't know what tapping his pipe on them does, because they just look old versus not old. Like it's not really a big move. It just seems completely performative.
I do think this is gonna be my Halloween costume next year. I'm gonna be shirtless with a taxi driver hat, my hair sticking out from the sides, and smoking a pipe.
I love this. You know what? There's one more thing you have to
Everyone
know.
will definitely like go, "Oh, you're Bruce Dern for Family Plot." Got it.
You're going to be the weirdo who does the Halloween costume that no one understands. There's one other thing we need to talk about, which is, of course, this movie has, I think, a really good score. I don't know about you. I think and it is done by the absolute legend John Williams.
Yeah. I didn't know this until you wrote it in the notes. I did not pay attention.
So I was sitting there watching the movie, and I was just like, "This is a really good score. I like this score a lot. Like, I like what it's doing. I like, I think it's just a really good job doing transition scenes and while movement and discovery are occurring." And I'm just like, wait, this is John Williams does this?
Yeah, and this is like post Jaws, like the year after Jaws.
John Williams has a 3-year run where he does Jaws, the last Alfred Hitchcock movie, and Star Wars. Back.
Yeah. Who would have guessed that the Hitchcock movie is the one that does not matter in that bunch?
I know, it's so weird, right?
He works with 2 young and upcoming directors. I mean, that's definitely why Hitchcock was probably interested. He probably saw Jaws and was like, that composer did a great job. Like, it was very Hitchcock inspired, or like Bernard Herrmann inspired in his score. So he's like, I don't have Herman anymore. I can take, this guy, this young buck John Williams. Is it weird to imagine that John Williams once was a young buck?
I wonder how. I'm gonna have to look up how old John
There's
Williams
no way we could possibly do that. Like, do you have time to go to the library and get an encyclopedia?
I'm gonna have to look. Bernard Herrmann had actually, rest in peace, had died the year before, and this was not available for this film.
He was 46 when he did Family Plot. Or sorry, 44.
Was he really?
I just messed up on my math. Hey, 44. Yeah. Young buck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he'd been working probably too long. If we're being honest. Yeah, he's been working since the 1950s. Used to be credited as Johnny Williams, which just seems like a 1950s thing to do.
He's 88 years old. That's like slightly too old to be our president.
I would vote for John Williams
today.
Sure, why not? Why not?
Yeah, that's kind of the point we've gotten to.
I think we've also reached the point in this review of Family Plot where we have nothing else to say. Zach, do you have any final thoughts on the wonderful Family Plot?
I do have a little bit of regret, and this was the one Hitchcock movie that I kind of pushed for.
Mm-hmm.
It's one I for, and you haven't. And I think it's only one of the ones we've done for this bunch you haven't previously seen. And maybe I should have done Frenzy to also experience some craziness. But also, once we did this episode, I don't regret it, because this movie's batshit, and it's a lot of fun, I think, for me to talk about, and it was fun to visit. So, not an unsung great movie in Hitchcock's, but definitely a fun curiosity, for people to check out.
I am definitely not sad we did this, because I'll be honest, looking at all the Hitchcock I hadn't seen, Family Plot was not at the top of my list, but I'm also very glad I watched this truly insane final work in the career of this truly amazing director. I think it's just really, it's a really interesting movie. It's a really weird movie. And I think the overarching theme of this is just, wow, Alfred Hitchcock, even in the 1970s, was willing to try to adapt his style to a new decade and a new way of filmmaking. So I think, at least on that front, we should really congratulate him. That's really impressive for a guy who had been working since the 1920s.
Yeah.
And let's do a quick diversion to talk about 1970s Alfred Hitchcock. Now, this is a really interesting section compared to some of the previous one, because we don't have 10 movies to talk about. We have Two. We have
Okay.
1972's Frenzy, and we have 1976 Family Plot. Zach, have you seen these movies? And do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I've seen Family Plot. Have you not paid attention for the past 40 minutes?
Zach, would you like to give us your thoughts on Family Plot?
Okay, so it starts off. She's a fake um, median. So I had not seen Frenzy, but my general thoughts, we expressed not only in the middle of this episode, but also kind of last episode, which
Mm,
is one, he's starting to get sick. So I feel like, or he's
yeah.
well sick at this point. So I feel like
Hmm.
that may be partly the blame for the lack of tightness. Um, to I think these movies in a little bit of how off the rails they go. It does seem like it's made by a person who maybe was not completely there. In a lot of ways, I don't want to assume that, but I
Mm,
am anyways because I can say whatever I want on the podcast I don't listen to. But also it is trying to move forward with the times, try to do something different that maybe not keep up with the times, but as you said, something that was unavailable for him to be able to do earlier because of different codes and expectations of studio movies this time. And that New Hollywood, the expectations were completely different. There's a lot more director freedom, and
mm.
he really just took advantage of it.
And the movie he probably does this more than anything is 1972's Frenzy, which is a movie about a male serial killer who seduces women and while having sex with them, chokes them to death while they're naked.
So the Lucas Showbox story, got
Well, Michael Campbell will enjoy that show.
it.
No, but like Frenzy is his only R-rated movie, and like this is a decade where he does two movies and he has nudity and direct references to sex and people wanting sex and lust and like all the stuff that is kind of not as much there, or at least under the surface in his previous work. So it is a very weird director. It's a very weird decade for him because he only does two movies. And yeah, I think, as you were saying, his health definitely must have played a part. This is a guy who goes from making 10 plus movies a decade, one or more a year, to making, only two this decade. He's taking, he does a movie in 1969, he does one in 72, he does one in 76. He's taking 3 to 4 years off between them. This is, Alfred Hitchcock was a year between or less. Like he would do 2 to 3 a year sometimes. Yeah, and then he would die in 1980 at the age of 80, incidentally. Yeah, so this is like the final decade of his career. Um,
That
that is
people
kind
forget
of
about. They think that it kind of
oh,
ended after like Birds, but
I'll be honest.
no,
I
he
think most
had
people think
50 career.
I think most people think his career ended in like 1965.
Yeah,
They don't think about the fact, well, because I mean, Torn Curtain, Topaz, Frenzy, and Family Plot are not his most well known films.
but also with the late '60s, it's really the people that were inspired by him starting to move
Mhm.
Hollywood in a different direction. It's almost he passed the torch, and it was just moving away from him. So his movies were less, in the consciousness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have definitely enjoyed digging into the career of Hitchcock. I hope you, Zach, enjoyed this, and I hope the audience did as well.
Not as much as Adam's Family and Hotel Transylvania, but sure.
So this is the end of our November month. We are coming back in December to do band forming movies. We will be doing movies where people form bands, and we
I
will
was
be
not
starting.
convinced you forgot it. Why you were trying to say the next one?
And we will be starting our run of band forming movies in December with The Commitments. So
Yeah.
get excited and get ready. Zach Ford, this was awesome. We will see
That's
you for
fun.
The Commitments.
I feel like I'm legally obligated to by the contract that I signed with you. Yeah,
All right,
podcast. Oh, it's commitments, fucking rules. Watch it.
let's do it. We will see you guys next week. Peace.